This conference will now be recorded.
To the topics we're each going to be covering.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Novo Manna and welcome to the Technology Review Council. Today we have the HR Data Cloud group, and I do mean group. We have four very extremely talented gentlemen who are going to present to us their solution. As always, I would ask you to keep yourself on mute. I will be checking the chat boxes out there, so if you've got questions, please pose them out there, or maybe, unfortunately, GoToMeeting doesn't have a raise your hand, so just wave at me or something, and I'll recognize you. I'll get the questions asked and so on. But they've asked that we hold those questions until they finish their short presentation, and then we'll open it up for lots of questions. So, alrighty. So, Roy, it is yours. Take it away.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and if you'll just give me a moment, it flipped to the wrong page. And
looking good.
All right, here we go.
There we go. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to introduce ourselves and to introduce HR Data Cloud. I'm Benny Redden, and I bring several decades of HR technology expertise to this platform. I've worked within vendor organizations building HR tool sets, and then consulting with client organizations using those tool sets. It's kind of been my in and out pattern for several decades. My vision was always to leverage the people data that we have out there, thinking that that's a pretty important strategic asset for companies. And we never really had the ability to get at data until the last 4 or 5 years in a cohesive manner. And I began what is now HR Data Cloud some 3 years ago, focusing on leveraging the latest in cloud development, cloud platforms, to architect a solution to allow us to holistically manage data from an HR-centric perspective.
Hello, my name is Bernie Pruce, and I've been building data and data analytics systems for over 30 years. My driving force is that I like to build systems that get the right data to the right people at the right time. As a kid, I always thought I wanted to be a pilot, and I didn't have an airplane, but I had an active imagination, and I loved thinking about the cockpit and all the control systems. Later, the Navy taught me to run a nuclear reactor, and if you've ever seen those in the movies, they have a lot of instrumentation and a lot of data coming at the people operating the nuclear reactor. After that, they taught me to drive a 600-foot ship, and if you've ever been on the bridge of a large ship, they also have a lot of instrumentation and a lot of information that you need to get at the right time to the right people, or things can go very wrong. I also finally got my my pilot's, at least my student pilot's license, and you got to actually be in the cockpit. And again, getting the right information at the right time to the right person, right, who can make decisions, is critical in all those cases. And I like to take all that thinking and apply it to business, because the people driving the business need to know they need that information, and they need it in a timely manner, and they need it in a way that doesn't distract them from the decision they need to make.
Thank you, Benny and Bernie. And I'm Roy Altman. Many of you know me. For those who don't, I too have been working in the HR technology space for a long time. And over the course of my career, whenever I saw something that's not working quite right, that's not giving the customer the value that they need, I would try to fix it. And in the on-premise days, that would involve actually customizing the system or building new applications. But now we're in the cloud world where you can't customize and you can only configure. So what do you do when there are problems? And the answer is you build around the applications. You build supporting tool sets to solve those problems. And I think this is an example of that. So our mission is to provide a place for you to keep all of your data, have it cleaned, harmonized, and organized so that you can do the strategic people analytics that add value to your company and feel confident that that information is correct and actionable. And whenever I see presentations like this, I've seen a lot of them on TRC and other places, I always ask myself, does the world really need this? And I feel the world does need this, because without it, you're making business decisions on incomplete or incorrect information. It's defeating the purpose. And the way to get there using data management and integrations, well, they're important, and they're expensive and they're hard to do right. I've seen them done wrong several times. We partner with you to let you focus on your business needs.
Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. Yes, good afternoon. My name is Darren Reese. I'm on the biz dev side here at HRDC. I've been doing this HR tech stuff for about 25 or 30 years and have had a kind of what I think is a pretty interesting and varied career. I've worked for small organizations, I've worked for large organizations and Fortune 500s. I've worked as the business and service owner. I've worked on the sales and implementation side as well as the product development side. One of my more interesting products or projects was implementing or doing the technical implementation for a large multinational food services organization that we've probably all heard of. I'm not sure if I'm really allowed to tell who they are, so I'm just going to call them Odexo. Odexo was coming from a PeopleSoft and SAP environment, moving on to ADP's EB5. They had many other systems in their ecosystem, both purchased and built, that we had to figure out how to connect them all. We ended up with about 120 different integration points. The business required that all of the historical data be retained. And of course, coming out of two legacy systems, as well as all the very others, there was a lot of different data formats and different data layouts. And even though EV5 is PeopleSoft at its core, the version of PeopleSoft that they're on and what they're going to are completely different. Data didn't fit neatly from one system to the other between any of these things. There were a lot of data inconsistencies between the two systems. It wasn't always clear also which one had the most accurate and up-to-date information. And the coding processes between the systems were completely different. That caused a whole lot of issues as well. So the business needed to have ready access to the data in a very flexible way to drive business decisions. This was huge for them because as they were moving over to EV5, they weren't going to have direct access at the level they were used to having, not just because it was a new environment and hosted by ADP, but because it was the comprehensive outsourcing solution, and ADP has complete control over everything in that environment. So to summarize, we needed to consolidate the historical data into future data. They needed a way to clean up all of their data. They needed access to all the data and to have some control over it. And they needed a way to simplify those data transformations and movements between systems. If we couldn't get this done, they were going to cancel the project. Now, I was young, I was naive, and I was overly confident. And I figured, hey, I've got the solution. We'd build a big data warehouse that would take all the historical data and all the additional data from all the other systems, as well as from EV5 going forward. It's just a big database, right? How hard could this be? Well, I did say I was young and overly confident and naive, right? So we might as well add stupid to that list, because I learned very quickly that this was a big, hairy, scary project. With the tools that we had access to some 20 odd years ago, and the level of complexity, it was a massive undertaking far beyond anything I was prepared for. There was no way to manage the data collisions between systems. There was a complex org structure with multiple data hierarchies that we needed to manage. The security model that was required needed to be dynamic. And there was a tremendous amount of heavy lifting on the part of IT. And on top of all that, it was incredibly slow, everything that we did.
Now I got to unmute. So let's talk about why now. So it used to be that companies had to manage all of their infrastructure for all the software they ran and develop most of the software themselves in-house. Then came the cloud quite a few years ago now, it seems. But at first that was still a little scary and hairy, and you still had to do a lot of your own work to get all that stuff put together. Now we have the maturity of the cloud data platform. We have platforms such as Snowflake and Looker, which take care of all the undifferentiated heavy lifting for us. And those tools can be spun up in hours with no initial cost to speak of, compared to the old days. That is such a different pace of work that we can do. They also use a pay-as-you-go model. So we can get started, or you could get started with very little upfront costs as far as the infrastructure goes. Best of breed tools and platforms like AWS, Snowflake, and Looker let us focus on delivering value to you instead of us dealing with the infrastructure. We can use our knowledge that we've developed over all these decades we've been talking about, and put it to work for you instead of us dealing with that infrastructure under the covers.
And we pass that notion of undifferentiated heavy lifting on to anyone using the HR Data Cloud platform. You know, we're people who come from HRIS. That's our discipline. We don't want to worry about standing up servers or building SFTP sites or working on these APIs all the time. We want to take the data in our workdays or our job bites or our cornerstones and start leveraging that data. If we also have to be experts in exporting data from these systems, combining them in another database or spreadsheets, that's undifferentiated heavy lifting. It's tedious, time-consuming, and error-prone. We've chosen to be cloud native. We rely on AWS to do a great deal of heavy lifting for us. They provide the data stores, the databases, the processing services, the identity and access management to segregate tenants so that we can provide that quality data management to you as our contribution to undifferentiated heavy lifting.
So if we've convinced you and you want to build a data platform, what are your choices? Well, first of all, you could do it yourself. And for years, I've been encouraging companies to manage their own data warehouse and become experts in integrations. So you can do that. You can build and manage your own data warehouse. Just be aware that it's expensive and that it takes a lot of talent, and that talent's hard to come by. But if that's your strategy, I would encourage you to go ahead and go this route. Otherwise, you can use consultants to build a data warehouse. And there are a lot of really good data management consulting firms out there. That too is costly to build that data warehouse, and once they build it, they leave. And also, a lot of them are kind of, you know, generic data management companies. They don't have a focus on HR. We are HR focused, and we're going to stay with you after we build it and be your partners to serve your data needs going forward. Third, this is all about analytics. So a lot of the great analytics tools out there, such as Vizier, OneModel, Alteryx, and there are many others. They'll give you the ability to merge data sets right in the data visualization tool. And if that's what you want, if you just want to tactically create a report that merges data sets, that's a good way to go about it. But if you really want a strategic and a holistic way of merging your data and a way to present it as a strategy of your company that's focused on HR and has the expertise to build this, I really think that we are the best choice out there.
Yep, and one of the things I was noticing is we only had 3 choices, but we are the 4th choice, just to clarify that. And we like to say that our advantage is that, you know, our managed data platform becomes the holistic data fabric of all your HR data systems. We have decades of experience dealing with operational and analytic data systems in general, and HR systems in particular. We facilitate the ingestion, transformation, cleansing, and the master data management for you.
You may have jumped ahead just a little bit there, Bernie, but HR Data Cloud is that 4th option.
You're right. I got to the wrong slide. Sorry about that.
No worries. No worries. If you don't make mistakes and it wasn't live.
Yep.
And you'll hear, especially me, talk about all your data is in one place, all your data is in one place, all your data is in one place. We do that cleansing and harmonization and transforming, and we also retain what it looked like in its native system. So one of the great benefits to that is that we can, and it's an intended benefit, because we're giving these different perspectives, we can represent your job-wide organizational structure that was used for recruitment right alongside your UKG core HR organizational structure. So you can do a lot more strategic work in manipulating organizations, seeing them the way they really work, and seeing the history of them along the way. So if you expand your portfolio of HR applications and need to do a new implementation, or you get another company through acquisition and you need to combine HR systems, you've already got a place where all the core data exists and it can be migrated into these new systems for the initial data load very, very easily. And quite often, as Darren said, the challenge is keeping your historical data. Quite often when you do an implementation, it's such a heavy lift to get the data into a new system that the historical data is just left behind. We maintain that point in time in perpetuity. So this leads to a place where now you have a viewport into the strategic data you need, insights into your workforce across that whole fabric of your HR data, leaving you in a position to better compete rather than spend all your time in the data management tedium.
So this is the part where I was supposed to jump in with our advantage, and at the risk of repeating myself, I'm going to repeat myself. And then if we want, we can edit it out of the tape later, right? So our managed data platform becomes the holistic fabric, the data fabric for your organization and all of your HR systems in particular. We take all of our experience dealing with operational and analytics data systems in general and HR systems in particular and apply it for you. We facilitate the ingestion, transformation, cleansing, and support the master data management for you.
And the key to this is a robust HR data model. We follow that insurance commercial. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. So we've seen systems going back for quite some time, know how the data is represented in them, and we've created a data model that mirrors all of that from what Mark Miller refers to as womb to tomb, from your recruitment systems all the way up through succession planning and more in between. And because we've got that HR data model and we're working in a cloud native platform, we have a scalable architecture. It scales both horizontally when you add new systems into your portfolio, as well as vertically for megabytes to gigabytes to terabytes of data. And because we have this deep history in the HR discipline, we can also partner with you to tease out the insights this combined data starts revealing.
So let's talk a little bit about what an engagement with us would look like. So we work hand in hand with your subject matter experts to understand the nuances of how you guys do human resources and how you use your HR systems. Together, we will onboard your data systems and map your data into our standardized data model. We will also define the integrations that pipe data from one system to another. And then we will also generate data quality reports so that we can work together to help you clean up your data as you're bringing it on board.
So anybody who's been in this industry any amount of time knows that the single hierarchical structure is not the way business gets done. If you read people like Josh Bersin, he talks about it all the time, as well as others. There are many organizations within a company. There's the HR structure versus the financial structure. There are many matrix management structures whereby small project teams exist for just for a project and then they go away. The relationship between HR business partners and the parts of the organization that they serve are matrix structures. And today's focus on the agile methodologies says that we don't, project teams aren't even hierarchies at all. They're small teams and they're networked with other teams for support. So we offer an organizational modeling and an organizational management function that's native to our platform. So part of the problem is keeping this in sync. I mean, imagine how many different project teams there are in an organization. It's hard to get your overall structure right, let alone every little project team. And that's way too much for one admin to do. So we have a couple of strategies to keep your information in sync. First is what we call distributed management, distributed ownership, so that every project manager has the ability to quickly pull together a project team when disbanded at the end of a project. We have metadata-driven business rules that'll keep certain structures in sync. And this is important for reporting. I've been in situations where I've given a report to a senior executive and she said, hey, where are the rest of the people in my organization? Because the way she saw her organization was not represented anywhere in the organizational structure. Security, as people move around the organization, they have to be granted and revoked access to certain certain facilities. We can do that through data-driven business rules and keep everything in sync automatically. And workflows, we have to make sure that your business processes get routed to the right person based on the way work is really done and not the static hierarchical organizational structure. So, but this is really about analytics. I want to talk about, the end result of this analytic. We're not going to demo a data warehouse for you because it's really uninteresting, but we would like to talk about analytics a bit. And when I get a report that's just a spreadsheet with a lot of numbers in it, I start focusing on what those numbers mean and what's the relationship between them. And the frontal lobe of my brain becomes engaged because that's the part of your brain that's involved with thinking. But when you see a chart with different colors and different shapes, the part of your brain involved with seeing gets engaged, and that's the rear of your brain. So your whole brain gets engaged when you see a data visualization, and not only can you understand the relationships between the entities in the report, but you viscerally feel the information as well as understand it. So we offer several analytics options. One of them is out-of-the-box drag and drop data visualizations. We use a tool that will allow you to get started doing visualizations very quickly. We have custom predictive analytics and workforce planning through a partner, a best-of-breed partner of ours, Vimo Software, and the CEO, Peter Lauch, is here. Thank you for joining us. And he can provide a big array of data visualizations. We're compatible with any business intelligence tool that you use. If you're a Tableau shop or a Power BI shop or anything else, we can support that. We can expose our data store, a section of it that's optimized for reporting with the proper security applied, and you can take that data and you can use it for whatever works for you. And as you become mature in terms of analytics and you want to do some machine learning and artificial intelligence, well, that's based on unstructured data such as text, pictures, video, chats. And the way to store that is a data lake. And part of that platform is a data lake. So you can start loading all that data in and get your data scientists up and running with using machine learning and really getting the most you can out of your analytics. I'm going to show you some examples of data visualizations. This one's concerned with workforce planning. This one is labor keeping, timekeeping analysis, so you can see where your labor spend is going. I'm just going through this quickly. This one is a headcount analysis. The purple bars show predicted values, and the blue ones are what happened historically, and the line shows the gap between what you're hoping for and what we predict that you'll have in terms of headcount. This one, again, shows historical trends as well as predicted trends, so you can kind of get a sense of what your needs are in the future. Here's a dashboard that shows KPIs. And at beginning and end of year workforce analysis shows the beginning of year headcount, end of year headcount, and all of the different types of additions and subtractions of headcount, so you can get to your final headcount, and yes, you can drill down on any of this. Workforce diversity, you can take a look at the diversity in your workforce and slice and dice it through many dimensions so you can see what your true diversity numbers are and really identify areas where you need improvement.
For years now, we've been talking about moving things into a SaaS environment, and the reason for that is of course, to free up a lot of the resources from an HRT perspective, management of the systems, and so on. The advantage of moving to a PaaS or platform of a service is it eliminates the need for IT to really be involved in the ground level with this, and we become kind of your data handyman, as it were. Your implementation for this will have a fee. As we look at the costs and fees associated with it, there's going to be a one-time implementation fee, and then an annual management fee for a subscription fee for it. One of the things that I really like about this model is that subscription fee is not just based off of how big and complex your data is, but also how much is used. In other words, there's a direct correlation between your price and the value that you get for the solution. Either way, it's a lot cheaper than any other component of your HR technology stack. Pennies on the dollar, really. So that we can, as we take that data management piece off your to-do list. So most applications that are in the cloud struggle a little bit there because they weren't natively built for the cloud. They're just applications that happen to live in the cloud. So we have made a strategic decision from the very beginning to go all in on cloud and become cloud native with our application. We've done that so that we can take advantage of the scalability, the speed, and all the other benefits of cloud computing. And in partnering with AWS to do that, we're able to offer 5 nines of availability. And security, as it is at AWS, for us is job zero. So everything that is in motion is encrypted, everything's at rest is encrypted, and we don't see your data unless you give us permission to go in and help you support it. To further that along, we're in the process of wrapping up our SOC 2 certification.
Now the fun part of every presentation, that's the summary, where we can actually get to the questions. Again, the repetitive statement I keep making is now that your data is all finally in one place and it's harmonized, it's transformed, you've got a strategic asset that you can begin using. This allows, cloud native allows us to continue innovating. One of the chief architects for AWS talks about using the cloud native capabilities to continue to float your boat higher and higher as AWS adds more capabilities. For instance, we will not have to stand up any machine learning tools ourselves because AWS has already built those. So we're able to take that and innovate at a fairly rapid pace so that you also can innovate. We become that data fabric where all the data between your systems becomes a rich tapestry for you to be able to start teasing out all of the insights that you need, the scenario planning that you haven't been able to do easily in the past, and to be able to have a very accurate representation of your workforce.
And our solution really fills the gaps between your HR applications. It fixes those little problems that none of your applications can fix. And in that sense, it really gives you a unified environment, even though you may have, 16, 20, 50 applications, it looks as if it's unified because the application merges your data and unifies it for you. We manage it for your data, for your changing data needs. We are your business partners going forward. And we have value-added apps such as the HR data model and the multi-organizational management facility. We realize to be ahead of the pack, we have to continue to innovate and add more tools for you. And we plan to do that. And I just want to say an application is different than a platform in that an application does a particular business process and does that one process for you. Whereas a platform is a set of tools that allow you to solve those problems that come up that you didn't anticipate. Therefore, the platform is really the way to optimize your organization in an agile environment. And we like to think that we have a completeness of vision. Part of that value proposition is the expertise and experience that we bring, and we feel that we have a very mature way of addressing this. So we'd like to thank you for your attention, and we'd like to open it up for questions.
Great. So thank you all very, very much. Very entertaining. I'm going to ask the audience, but I do want to point out that you've got 3 questions sitting out there, Benny and Roy and Bernie and Darren. I would like to say, let's start with Lance's question. If a company already has all their employee data globally in a single HRIS, would there still be, whoops, it just disappeared off my screen here. Too many questions coming in. basically, do you really need your product? And I'd love to hear your answer, because I think I'd love to answer it, but I don't think I want to do that for you.
Well,
So
I mean, 99% chance that the answer to that is yes, because even if you have all of your data on one HRIS, you probably have a dozen or so, at least a dozen or so other applications. I was just on a project where we were trying to merge data from the talent acquisition module with the HRIS, and if there's no platform for that, you're getting a different view of the workforce. I think it's akin to that old story of the blind men trying to describe an elephant. You know, you can only see one little part of the elephant, and you can't, you know, describe the elephant as a whole, because each application is only seeing one part of it. The latest Sapient HR Systems survey says that the average company has 16 different applications and about 120 integrations. And for a large company, it could be over 100. Person says there are over 120 people apps in the average large company. So yeah, the chances are to get a unified view of your data across applications, even if you buy everything from Oracle or everything from SAP or everything from Workday, there are going to be other applications out there that have pivotal data that you're going to miss unless you have some way of merging that data.
great. So there's a lot of things sitting out here. So let me go back here to a couple of questions that might be easy. So who are your competitors? I think you hit those up front with the one model and the others.
Yeah. So there are the data visualization companies, because they have to have some place to put your data to, you know, to visualize it. But they don't do the work that we do in terms of cleaning it up and harmonizing it and getting it all in a single structure and getting it all talking to each other. We really focus more on the data management than on the analytics. A lot of the analytics tools focus more on the analytics rather than the data management. And one person from one of the major analytics companies, when we showed her, you know, explained to her this platform, her reaction is, well, with your platform in conjunction with our data visualization tool gives the client a quicker time to value. So there are really two parts of that equation, and the data visualization companies really focus more on the analytics. Second, there are a lot of other consulting firms that specialize in building you know, data platforms. Once again, they're not HR focused, they're more generally focused, and they build the platform and leave rather than being your, you know, their model is a consulting gig. They do it and they leave rather than ongoing, you know, being your partner.
Gotcha. I'm going to ask.
I'd like to add on to that a little bit more and say one of the things that you know, I think everybody on this call is probably aware of is HR data is wonky compared to other types of data, whether it be supply chain or finance and things along those lines. And other companies out there that are trying to fit the same or come up with similar solutions, they're trying to be everything for everybody, and their warehouse is trying to account for data for all types, including HR, and they tend not to be HR specialists. And that's one of the real value adds that we bring to the table, is that clear understanding, that history and experience in working with HR data systems, so that we understand how those data structures really need to be built.
I'm going to ask Laurel's question very quickly. I think it's a quick answer, and that is, how often can you refresh the data? How close to real time can you get?
As fast as you want. If your application supports webhooks, then it's going to be very close to real time. As soon as that event occurs, we get the webhook and we're able to either go back into the system and flesh out the rest of the webhook, or if that webhook was complete, had all the data we needed, it goes into the systems immediately, into the operational data store immediately. And barring that, we can set up just about any schedule that you'd like as a time task. So for instance, with a UKG, if you want your employee census, we can get that reports as a service, go in and call that on a nightly refresh, hourly refresh, minute by minute, even if you wanted to put that much load on your UKG.
Right. And you've answered the question that you can go and query the various applications, bring it back to you rather than the other way of a push.
That's correct. We can pull as well as receive events.
Okay. I don't want to disregard Dennis's question over here, which he's asking, how is, where are you in deployability, i.e. are you in beta, full release? Where are you at?
Yeah, great question. We're in the process of implementing our first customers now.
Outstanding. That's good news. And then architecturally set up as a centralized situation, i.e. Web 2, how do you reconcile this with the migration to Web 3 decentralization?
We have a couple of things we're doing with that. Yes, we do have a centralized operational data store, and there are good reasons to do that because in a centralized way, you're able to do a lot more aggregation, but we also shard out the interesting elements for a particular client's interest into Snowflake so that you can then have a measure of decentralization for that data in order to have more rapid analytics and tighter fine-grained control over your information.
Great. So
and there's some things we're also doing in the blockchain world that we're not going to be able to talk a lot about here because it's still roadmap rather than something we can say is already there for the decentralized IDs.
So I'm going to put a plug for Iram and Dennis, who has managed through a couple of connections and so on to put Iram in the middle of the blockchain for HR information. We would love to have you as a partner. So I will hook you guys up. In fact, Roy, you and Dennis talk. Definitely, in a sense. Okay, that being said, like I said, I have a ton of questions, but let me start with probably the hardest one to answer, and that when Benny talks about the fact he's been doing this for decades, how can he do that when he looks so young?
Magic of Hollywood, right?
Yeah, clean living.
Totally stress-free life.
No, on a more serious note. So a very quick set of questions, and I'd like to get a little deeper as we go on this one. But with the perspective, are you having partners in your world out there? I.e., I have a Vizier sitting inside, or I have one model, or whatever, and maybe not one model, but maybe in the other data visualizations. Are you going to partner with them so that you are melding your infrastructure and some of the metrics, but let's say the infrastructure is the value I'm saying right here, with somebody else who's got some visualization tools out?
Yeah, well, we partner with Vimo, and Peter is here, and he can answer any question. I saw there were some questions about drilling down on the data, and he can talk to that. We do want to be flexible. There are a lot of companies. A former client of mine, as a matter of fact, who has developed expertise in data visualizations, but their data is a mess. So we want to accommodate that too. And we want to accommodate the customer that kind of wants to do it themselves, but is just starting out. That's why we offer options. But Vimo is a strategic partner of ours.
And when we talk to some of the other analytics vendors out there, people like, well, we won't make it look like they're our partners, but they rhyme with Izier. They've indicated that having this kind of capability for their clients would get a much more rapid time to value for their analytics product.
Yeah. So that order on a second, but oh, go ahead, please.
I'm just going to add to that we also have a ton of experience in Snowflake, and we lean toward Looker as far as a data visualization platform for self-service. And as we go along, some of those are kind of plug and play, and if we, but I kind of think of them as a partner. Even they're not necessarily partners yet with HR Data Cloud, but powered by Snowflake, powered by Looker is kind of on our plan and what we're developing with at the moment.
So I don't want to misinterpret Oral's question, and it was kind of echoed. It's a low code, no code situation, but I want to change my analytics, and maybe I've got Vizier. How do I go doing it with you in there and data visualization? So I could rely on the other vendors' data metrics package and do it from there. But do you have the ability to change up the data going over to your partner for the visualization piece? And if doing so, what does that mean? Where do I sit in there versus IT versus you guys?
If I can speak to that as far as the data visualization, what Looker allows is for you to have a power user who can tweak and change your data analytics presentation. If you have a different calculation that we need to implement, that can be done in Looker, and it can also be done if it's really depending on the complexity of that, we may need to add that to our transformations.
Just an illustration of that, in order to get one of these first two production clients, we had some data handed to us that needed to be put into some visualizations, and in a matter of about 4 hours, Bernie and I were able to pull the data in, and Bernie and one of his associates were able then to use the Looker to provide half a dozen visualizations and a dashboard that the client could use to drill around from the high-level summary data down into the details for each of the individual business units they needed to work with.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So I'm not even sure where to start with my questions because they go all over the place. It's kind of like my mind. But let me ask a question first. I have tons of history.
Oh, we didn't talk about that, did we?
Yeah, we did. We did talk about it.
We said it? Okay. My
brain.
So once we map your,
there we go.
Part of the problem is, I'm sorry.
No,
part of the problem is, like, let's say your new system's Workday and your old system is something else. The data doesn't match up. But once we map it all into our HR data model, you have a steady stream of continuous data merging, going through the eras of your old system into Workday. It's transparent to the user once we can map it. And that's a huge advantage rather than going, well, here's the Workday data in this format, and here's the old data in PeopleSoft format, for instance, and it's hard to match it up. Also with transformations. Transformations are usually one way. You take your PeopleSoft data, you transform it into the way you want your organization to look in the Workday world. We can transform it back and forth. We can apply the current state to the past data, or the past state to the current data. Usually, when you do a data migration, it's a one-way transformation done in spreadsheets, and then it's gone.
Mm-hmm. So in a sense, I mean, literally in your example, Roy, you are the data. I don't really need to go to either system to understand. You have standardized the data in a model. So here's my other question from a data governance standpoint. If I buy into your product and your data model, is that not the place where I now have instituted an information governance perspective that says, forget what you used to know and forget the new system we put in place. Yours is the data standardization of this organization with regards to HR data. Is that a fair statement?
I think we still have to have define what the system of record is. And a lot of times it may be upstream from us, or if it's transformed in a certain way, it would be us. But in a complex organization, it's a lot of times it's not just one, right? It could be data element by data element. What is your system of record?
Right.
And that's kind of up to the data governance team to help us. Well, they may drive it, or we can help them drive it. But that needs to be, I think it can be case by case, and it can be all the way down to element by element sometimes.
Right. And it really brings in a nuanced conversation to define the difference between system of record and system of entry, right? So you may be having your core HR system or your talent management system is your system of entry, and it may be the one where you're doing a lot of the work, but ultimately the system of record becomes your data warehouse where everything is stored together.
Right. And there's a couple of folks in the audience who probably ears just pricked up on that statement. So I'll talk to them later. I love what you said on that one, Darren. Question about Dennis talked about upon the decentralization and so on, but I'm having to deal today with a global organization. As a result of that, do you ensure the privacy considerations around GDPR and all the other California privacy, you name it? How do you apply that, and what responsibility do you take in that role?
Yeah, great question. So as we go through our SOC 2 certification, GDPR, CCPA, those types of things are absolutely a consideration to make sure that we're managing data privacy, implementing policies and procedures, as well as mechanisms to purge data upon request, those types of things, all the expectations of those. We are data, we view ourselves as a sub-processor generally. We're getting the data, but we're being told what to do with it. But that becomes a nuanced conversation with each client and how we're managing that data as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Dumb question, but you mentioned HR data, as you said, womb to tomb. Did that include pension data, which is beyond the tomb, I guess, or whatever the case may be, the afterlife?
Yeah.
Yes, we can. We have a fully fleshed out compensation module in there that will store any kind of payroll, pension, et cetera data.
Great, great. Alrighty. And then you mentioned workflows. So that's kind of a confusing thing, because with the new technology, people are looking, and maybe it goes to this idea of system of record, system of entry, but a workflow has a lot of front end, heavy lifting. Is this data correct? The person who's giving it, are they asking the right questions? Are they putting the right data in there? Does there more to be add? How do you deal with the workflow? I know you mentioned keeping the organizational structure in place, making sure that workflows are going to the right people at the right point. How do you manage that? That's kind of the mystery sitting there.
I kind of didn't hear all of
Right,
that.
I couldn't quite get enough of that to answer your question.
Let me start that again. We may have an open speaker somewhere. So anyway, what I'm really suggesting is that the workflows is an important part, and that is that organizational matrix. But I got the impression that that's an extra piece of it, or that is part of what you're including.
That's part of it.
Yeah, we drive everything we do. It's not as was asked, is this low code or no code? And there are different perspectives of that. Peter answered in the chat that on the Vimo side, it's no code to you reconfigure your data visualizations. From our standpoint, everything we do is workflow. We don't write a lot of code and say, let's go connect to UltiPro, transform that, put it into the operational data store, and write it into Snowflake for the visualizations. Instead, we connect up microservices bit by bit. And so we have a microservice that knows how to get the data from UKG, another microservice that knows how to transform that, another microservice that posts it into our data store, and so on and so forth. That's a low-code environment. And so we workflow everything. And because we workflow everything, the capacity to put together what you would think of as custom workflows is available to any HR Data Cloud user.
Yeah, and regarding the multi-organizational model, we see that that's a real gap in the HR stack, managing multiple organizations effectively. And that's why it's really an integral part of the platform. Also, we have a long roadmap list. I don't want to talk too much about roadmap items. I think what we have right now is compelling enough to get you started, but just think of the possibilities when you're sitting on a platform that has all of your data. And this can be, non-HR data also.
I'll save that last observation for towards the end of this. But so you mentioned partners and that. Do you see this? Maybe it's a little bit of the roadmap. Do you see this as moving out of the HR discipline into also maybe financial discipline, where we try to combine HR and financial data together? God forbid.
Absolutely.
Yes, we've seen in all of our careers, we've seen that a finance system somehow has to be centered on people, on HR. And it was mentioned contact tracing in the chat. That also is centered around HR. So there are lots of different places where people data is so important that other disciplines need access to it.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of situations where the financial structure of the organization is different than the HR structure, and people have a hard time getting their heads around that. So you really do have to, if not merge the two, at least have common touch points.
Most of my, if I can just for a sec, most of my career I've done generalized data warehousing, and so sales and marketing data, finance data, manufacturing data. It really just depended on what the client needed, and so the infrastructure that we spin up for the reporting aspects of after we get out of the ODS into Snowflake, that would definitely support all the way across the organization to whatever level the organization had appetite for data warehousing and integrated reporting.
Yeah, I am happy that you mentioned things around the Microsoft platform, the Power BI, and so on and so forth. what I'm asking in a general sense, and I think you touched upon it, Roy, was the fact that content is really what you can store. It doesn't have to be just data. It can be lots of unstructured content, forms and video and PDFs and so on. Do you want to speak a little bit to that? Because I think when I look at a data warehouse, everybody's concentrating on pieces of data that then, call it information. But to me, information resides in lots of different places. So.
Right. I mean, we wanted to make this as open as possible and be as forward-thinking as possible. As I said, we have a roadmap, but there's a lot of stuff we can offer, a lot of, big tool set that we can offer right now. And the data lake is one of them. And we want to help you, go through the phases of analytics maturity and get to the point where you're doing sophisticated stuff with the information that's available to you.
Yep. I want to give recognition to Dennis's question here. I'm sorry. He's asking about, what do you have in your thoughts about beyond just, like BI or something, machine learning, AI, if you will, tuning your data coming in from, let's say, an ATS that's saying, hey, by the way, instead of me trying to figure out where our best sources are or the best candidates are, let the doggone AI try to figure that out with the masses of data along with other benchmarks that are coming from your vendors. Workday is doing benchmarks, UKG is doing benchmarks, everybody's doing benchmarks. Somebody's got to collate it. So is that in your thinking that with your data warehouse, that's where you could be doing that more responsibly?
Yes, and our first foray into machine learning is going to be guided machine learning, so that the workflows that were mentioned earlier, those you look at the patterns of how different data intakes and data transformations occur, and the guided machine learning will start doing those for us. So we don't do implementations anymore in a traditional sense. We don't have the project plan and tracking it in Jira and all that good stuff, but rather someone says, oh, gee, I want a PeopleSoft to with JobVite pattern, and it just automatically builds everything that's needed. So that's the first step in the roadmap for machine learning. But more to Dennis's point, yes, if you want to then turn that back around, you've gotten a lot of data from the ATS all the way through to your learning management and your performance reviews and such, so that you find out that there's something you need to do back in the ATS to encourage DEI initiatives, then absolutely you'd really want to be able to take machine learning and apply that, tease out that information and then apply something back to the ATS, so that whether that's third party or just HRDC doing this, I think that's a partnership, at least right now, to put something like that together. But ultimately, it'll be something because the data is view ported out to anyone who's got authority to review it. Then someone else could conceivably do that sort of thing within a few years.
And just the fact that we're getting these complex questions means that this platform is inspiring people to think beyond what's typical and think about what possibilities there can be. And then, that's wonderful. That's what we want. We want to, encourage creative thinking and then enable it.
So I'm going to ask the question I think I posed to you guys a long time ago, but let's just say it's top of mind for me. If I'm in an implementation, and more than likely I only have one system to move from to another new system, but let's say I'm moving to a point solution in the new world. Let's say I'm looking at different modules that are not even, maybe I've got a recruiting thing that is not part of the main system. I've got a learning system a little bit differently, and I want to keep all that stuff there. And I've got an old PeopleSoft system hanging out there, or a SAP. I think what I asked you before, and I think it's still true today, do I need to bring the historical information over? Do I have to spend the time? There's probably sometimes as long as the implementation itself to just correct the history to put them in the new system. Help me understand that question. How would you answer that? What advantages do you provide in that perspective?
I mean, first of all, I know a lot of companies that are, even though they've implemented Workday or whatever, they're still paying to keep PeopleSoft up because of the historical data. You don't need to do that. I mean, as you heard, it's a mapping exercise, and we're good at it. So you map your data, It's there in the platform, and you can kiss PeopleSoft goodbye and all the IT expenses that go along with maintaining it.
And you just reminded me of a little anecdote. When Roy and I met, we were working for a big global company that had been on a merger and acquisition tear, and they had ended up with 50 different HR systems because they did so many mergers and acquisitions. And so that's one of the things that we facilitate is if you do a merger and an acquisition, we can help get your data all together into one system. Or even if you have to keep one or two systems going for a while, at least all the data comes up and rolls up to one system for reporting.
Yeah, yeah. To your point, maybe I have to keep an old version of some system hanging out there, but it's not active. It's no longer being touched upon. I don't have to go back for the historical reporting. You've actually solved that. Many people argue about the fact that history is important for compliance and so on. So they spend a lot of time for very little return. So I like your answer. I'm going to ask a really dumb question, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And we are right almost on the hour. So if you guys are okay, I'm okay. I'm going to keep this open slightly longer. If anybody needs to leave, then let me say thank you for joining us. I guarantee you I'll drag these guys back. Yeah, I'll give you 6 months down the road, maybe a little longer. We'll see. But we want to see where you're going because I think it's both intriguing, on the money for a lot of things that are going on today, and I'm loving what I'm seeing. So thank you. And so I'll just keep this going. Let me ask the question. In all honesty, it strikes me like your database in the center of that, and the fact that you've got workflows and so on and reporting. Do I need a transactional system? Maybe I've got the ability to put transactional work into that. You know, maybe I've got a front end to your system that lets me put the data in. You've got that. And I've got a reporting system on the back end. Great. And I've got standardization. Do I need a transactional system out there? Can I build my own HR system?
That's not my appetite. I don't know about Benny and Roy and Darren, but that wasn't our appetite as we started this conversation.
I'm going to go back to my definition of applications versus platforms. We are a platform. We're not trying to be an application. Your applications do important things. I'm teaching a course in HRIS now. So the HRIS does a lot of work, and it keeps you compliant, and it facilitates the womb-to-tomb transactional processing for an employee. We don't want to do that. We want you to use an HRIS. We just want to consolidate all the data so that you can perform analytics off it.
Good. I didn't want somebody to go out and decide that they're going to have to build a new system again. One more time.
No, we leverage what you have and we make it all work better.
I like that answer much better. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm just reminding of that ad, right? BASF or whoever it was. We don't make bowling balls. We make bowling balls better.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, and another ad. You could pay me now or you pay me later. You know, you could do it yourself and fail and, you know, incur a lot of technical debt and paint yourself into a corner. Right. Or you can go with us and have that roadmap that'll allow you to get insights into the workforce through analytics.
Well, then I'll give a piece of, shall we say, my motto. The value of the advice I'm giving you is the price you paid for it, and this is free advice. So sit on that one for a while. Anyway, gentlemen, I have run out of my questions that would make any sense to ask here. I will invite you back at your discretion, but I would absolutely like to have you come back and tell us not only the success of what you're seeing in your clients, but what you're seeing, the practicality of what you've done and where you're going with it. Like anything else in the early stages, there's always going to be nuances to what you do, and you're going to learn through that. So we'd love to hear your lessons learned and where you're going with this. Are there any other questions from the audience that's left out there? If I'm going to keep an eye on the chat or raise your hand or unmute or whatever you'd like to do. Okay.
Looks like we're down to a handful of people, and a lot of people probably had meetings at the top of the hour.
Yeah, they probably did. That's the usual thing. Like I say, I just find your subject is both thought-provoking and compelling. A product aside, put it that way, I just truly like what you guys are doing. And I suspect you'll see some competition coming down the road. So again, thank you all very, very much for this. And I will post this guy up on this YouTube channel, let everybody know who missed this. There's probably a couple folks that would out there that would probably benefit from where you are today, even in the early stages. So I'm hoping that they'll hear or be referred to you and go from there. So again, thank you very much.
Thank
you,
you.
Noel, for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thanks much, all.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye guys.